And welcome everybody to the Gridiron Lion Show. It is time for Super Bowl 57. The whole season has been building up this moment. It'll be Eagles and Chiefs playing in Glendale, Arizona, and we are here to break it all down and also recap the NFC and AFC title games, which decided these two teams that will be playing for the Lombardi Trophy on Sunday. I am Casey Kreider, joined as always by my colleague and diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan, Zachary Stephen Rhoda, and joining us for the first time this season, this epic finale, at least pregame finale, Jack Burkhart. Jack, welcome to the show, my friend. Good to
What's up,
have you here.
guys?
How you feeling?
Thanks for having me. I'm feeling great.
That was quite the intro, Casey. I feel like we could just end the episode right now and it would be like some quality content already. I mean, damn. We did have an
I've
episode
been
last week because of the Pro Bowl, and let's be honest, who actually watched that thing? It's flag football. But we're back better than ever, and baby, who thought we would have made it this far? Here we are, Super Bowl weekend, and who would have thought that this team's logo above me is going to be playing?
We will talk
Wow,
plenty of
crazy
that,
world.
Zach. It is a crazy world. It really is. But Philadelphia, yes, after the season that they've had, 14-3 in the NFC this season, or in the regular season, of course, beating the Giants and beating the Niners in the playoffs, which we'll talk about in just a second. They are in the Super Bowl going up against the newly minted NFL MVP for the second straight, not second straight year, but for the second time in his career, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Of course, former Philadelphia Eagles coach Andy Reid. There's a lot of storylines with that coaching tree there that we'll talk about as the show goes on. Also have our producer Jace Gibbons back with us. But boys, let's get right into the action and let's start by recapping the NFC and AFC title games. Let's kick things off with the NFC since that was the first game. And Zach, I will open up the floor for you. Obviously, Eagles Niners. It was not the game that we were expecting because the Niners just decided that all their good players were going to get hurt, including both their quarterbacks. So it wasn't maybe the game that I think most of the NFL fan base wanted, but a win is a win, and Philadelphia is going back to the Super Bowl. Just talk to me about your reaction and your thoughts as that game went on because it progressively got better for the Eagles fans from the first quarter to the second half to all the stuff that happened with the injuries.
Okay, let me just start off by saying right out the gate, if they had Brock Purdy playing that entire game, I still believe full-heartedly that we would have won that game. And for a while, I was really scared going into that game. I thought the Niners for sure were going to go to the Super Bowl. And then as the game started, it wasn't even just the quarterback situation. I remember in the first half, Fred Warner went down with injury. I think he came back in. Nick Bosa got banged up. Like a bunch of key players were getting injured. And then once the nightmare situation happened at QB for them, there's just no chance. I mean, when you're talking about Christian McCaffrey running a wildcat potentially every single play or use check going in there at quarterback, I mean, like in theory it's fun, but at the same time, they don't like that just completely shuts off so much of your playbook. Who knows how many plays they actually know how to run? Like it's just such a train wreck from that point on. And I mean, as a result, the Eagles just obliterated them, and here we are. Couldn't be more
So
proud
what
of
you're
my
saying is
team.
the Eagles, they haven't actually played a real team yet in the playoffs.
Apparently not. No,
I,
that's
I'm
the
I'm
thing.
gonna
Like,
ask you about that later. I kind of want your thoughts on that because everyone's saying, "Oh, it's a Mickey Mouse run to the Super Bowl by the Eagles, and now they're playing a banged up team." Like, we'll talk about that later, but I keep that in the back of your mind because I want to get your
I
thoughts
do
on
have a
that because
lot to say about that.
I don't know if I don't know if I completely agree with that, but either way, yeah. With that being said, I mean there was just nothing the Niners could do, and it's a shame. I think it would have been a really good game between those two teams. We talked about in the lead up to the game how those two teams are structured very similar. in terms of they've got a really good run game that takes a lot of the pressure off their quarterbacks. And obviously, I'd say if not the two best defenses in the league, certainly two of the top defenses in the league with the Niners and the Eagles. Particularly the pass rush of the Eagles. I mean, we saw that. That was basically, I mean, there was a lot of controversy, I guess, talking about how, whether the Eagles were not that they were trying to injure Brock Purdy or Josh Johnson, but the fact that they were maybe kind of glorifying it just a little bit, from the standpoint of it, like, hey, like we got them hurt because we got so much pressure on them. But yeah, I mean, you talk about it once you get down to Josh Johnson, who's been on 29 different teams in the league, and then he gets hurt, you're pretty much completely out of options. Jack, what were your thoughts on the game from what you remember and what you saw?
I definitely think I was just kind of messing with Zach, but I definitely think that the Eagles were the much better team. I mean, yeah, I mean you can say that they haven't really played a real quarterback or anything like that, but I mean the Niners, I mean in my opinion, I think they have the strongest defense in the league, and the Eagles just continue to keep running on every team they play, and I mean their whole team's healthy. You got your entire offensive line healthy. So I mean, I mean, it's going to be really hard for anyone to beat them or for Kansas City to beat them, I think.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, thinking back to that game, from looking at it from the Eagles' offensive perspective, I mean, you look at the numbers, it's not that impressive. I mean, Jalen Hurts only had 121 passing yards. He, of course, did have the one rushing touchdown, 11 carries for 39 yards. The leading rusher was Kenny Gainwell, 14 carries for 48 yards. But a lot of that was set up by the Eagles defense and giving the Eagles short fields. Obviously, the Hassan Reddick play at the beginning that Brock Purdy got injured on, that was the play that really, I mean, obviously changed the entire game, but also it just kind of, put the stamp on the game that the Eagles were going to be relentless in their pressure. And then obviously they were able to get after Josh Johnson as well. They had that big fumble recovery before halftime when Josh Johnson, despite being in the league for 15 years, forgot how to hold a football. And the Eagles ended up scoring a touchdown off that. And that pretty much, at that point, once Johnson got hurt in the third quarter, you knew, already being down by, I think it was like 17 points at that point, there was no way they were going to be able to come back from that, with all the injuries that they had sustained. But I do agree with you, Zach. I do think even you can go.
I also, well, this kind of changes the point a little bit, so you can just finish up real quick.
Okay, all right. I will agree with you on the fact that I believe even if Brock Purdy was healthy, I mean, I picked the Eagles to win. We talked about that in the lead up to the show. I mean, I think even considering how good that Eagles pass rush was throughout the game. I mean, obviously, if Brock Purdy had been in there, maybe things would have been a little different. Maybe he would have gotten the ball out quicker. Maybe he would have been more elusive. Obviously, probably more accurate. But I agree. I think the way Philly was playing, they were going to win that game regardless. And they were still able to run the ball. I don't want to say all over the Niners, but they did what they had to do. Obviously, having some short fields, and everybody got involved. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell had 48 yards, Sanders had 42, Jalen had 39, Boston Scott had 21 and a tutty. I mean, you got a lot of those guys involved. They were able to move the ball pretty much any way they wanted to. They didn't get a lot going through the passing game, but they didn't have to. And, especially against the Niners defense that obviously is really good against the pass, it was very advantageous for them to just be able to kind of rely on the running game. But considering how suffocating Philly's defense was, I mean, even when you knew that they had to probably run the ball at the end, Niners are probably the best rushing team. Well, you could make an argument the Eagles are the best rushing team, but certainly two of the best rushing offenses in the NFL. They couldn't get anything going, even though everyone kind of knew it was coming. So I do think that considering how Philly's defense played, I think even if Brock Purdy's healthy, they still win that game. It's probably close, but I do think Philly would have been here regardless. We'll never know for sure, but I think they've earned their place in the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
I'll tell you what, dude, I have a gridiron lion first. Let's talk about the punting real quick because holy shit, dude. Brett Kern, That was terrible. And then what are the odds that that man punts the ball and it hits the wire? When does that happen?
Yeah, I
And
mean that's not
luckily we have
even really.
pro
Yeah,
kicker Sipas for the Super Bowl. But I remember that was like the most random factor that was playing into the game where Niners kept getting great field position because we punt it like 30 yards sometimes. It's like, what is this man doing? And yeah, as you guys said, we ran the ball really efficiently for most of the game. But I remember we started off on offense really hot. I think we scored on the first or second drive. And then there was a while where we were just kind of stalling for a bit. And it wasn't until we gained the momentum back with all the injuries and Purdy going down that we really started to just run up the score, it seemed.
yeah. I want to get your thoughts real quick on the Devontae Smith catch that wasn't a catch that set up that touchdown. I mean, everyone's kind of complaining about it, but like also you realize the Niners lost by 24 points. That one touchdown is not the reason they lost the game. I mean, that was a sick play to even like make it look like a catch because he reached out, stabbed that thing with one hand, and almost brought it in. But I mean, that play and then obviously that next ensuing drive because I think it was the first drive of the game that Purdy got hurt on. Those are the two drives that I guess really set the tone for the entire game.
Oh yeah, no, it clearly was not a catch, but it's still exciting nonetheless. When he first went up and got that live on TV, I went crazy, dude. It was amazing. And then once it showed it on the replay, I was just begging for them to just get the next play off so they couldn't even review it because I knew if that got reviewed, they would just overturn it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many missed calls. I mean, in every game, it's hard to. I mean, people are trying to blame, the loss and like, oh, that would have changed the momentum of the game, because they ended up scoring on that drive. But I mean, refs miss so many calls per games and stuff goes unnoticed. So I mean, you can't really dwell on that kind of stuff.
That's a good answer coming from a Bengals fan, particularly because I think the Bengals had a fair gripe after some of the stuff that happened. With that
Oh
being
yeah,
said, boys, are we ready to move on to that Bengals Chiefs? Okay, so
yeah, let's do it.
Jack, I don't know if you knew this. I picked beginning of the playoffs. I picked the Bengals and the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. I had the Bengals winning it all, and I really thought that
I
was going to
wish.
end up happening, but unfortunately, it is no longer Burrowhead in Kansas City, and the Kansas City Chiefs finally end up beating the Bengals after this is their fourth time playing
Mhm.
against each other in the past couple years. And 23-20, the final score. It was a close back and forth game. Patrick Mahomes, despite not being 100%, able to still pretty much put the team on his back offensively. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a huge game. He's had a huge playoffs, really. Travis Kelce came up big like always. For the Bengals, I mean, they did everything they could. They once again were down early in the game, but Joe Burrow found T. Higgins for that touchdown. I think that was right before halftime. That I
Mhm.
think halftime score was 13-6. So that was a big play. Jamar Chase also got involved as well. Bengals never really tried to establish the ground game, but they were in it the whole time. And it ultimately came down to that last drive. Chiefs going in, trying to get into field goal range. Joseph Osai commits that late hit on Patrick Mahomes as he scrambles, and ultimately that makes it a 40, I think 40, 41, something like that, yard field goal attempt that Harrison Butker knocks through and sends Kansas City to the Super Bowl. So, Jack, you had a front row seat for that game and obviously a very big vested interest. What were your emotions watching that game live? Because
Oh my gosh,
I
that
can't really imagine they were.
that game was a roller coaster. It was just it was all over the place. But I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, that there were some questionable calls. But I mean, you can't hit the quarterback out of bounds, and that'll cost you every time. But everyone's bashing Joseph Osai, but I mean, he had a good year. He kept coming on, and then I mean, in that game, he was pressuring Mahomes all night. getting him out of the pocket. And I mean, he played a huge part in our success in that game. So I hate when people kind of blame it on him. But I mean, that's just a rookie mistake, unfortunately.
Yeah, don't tell that to Jermaine Pratt, but yeah, no, he did have
Oh,
a game though. I mean, that was the thing. Like he was, in terms of up front, he was the guy that was, as you said, getting the most pressure. It seemed like for most of the game on Patrick Mahomes, trying to make him
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Zach, you obviously watched that game as well. What were your thoughts? I know sentimentally you were rooting for the Bengals as well. A Bengals Eagles Super Bowl, I think, would have been the dream scenario for all of us, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, that didn't end up happening.
all I'm saying is if if anyone's into sports betting, if you predict like a three spread for either way, you're bound to like be pretty close. Because isn't it now like hasn't every single Chiefs Bengals game been decided by 3 points now? I
Yeah,
thought
I
I
think.
saw that. Like
Yeah.
they
So
always play so
last
close.
last year we won on a game-winning field goal in the championship game, and then I guess I don't know. I don't remember how the regular season game was close, but I can't remember what
I
the
think
score
that was a
was.
touchdown, but I think you
Yeah, I think it was a little
guys
bit
were
more.
down. Yeah, but yeah,
I feel like also we both kind of knew going into that game with both those quarterbacks right there. Those are the top two quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and it's probably going to be that way for the next 5 to 10 years potentially. So neither one of those quarterbacks is going to let their team get blown out. They're going to do everything they can to put their team on their back. So with that being said, it only makes sense that it's always going to be that close. And
Yeah,
I had a
it'll always be
terrible
close.
feeling the Chiefs would win just because at some point, I mean, the streak has to end. To
Yeah,
go 4-0 against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs,
yeah. I mean, and
and with all the
Andy Reid.
Arrowhead talk too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to give Andy Reid credit too. I mean, he's an amazing coach, so he's not, he's obviously going to adjust and he knows what to do. I mean, I feel like when we played them earlier in the season, I mean, they really didn't show that much because the possibility of that matchup happening again in the playoffs.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think and looking at that game too, I mean, obviously we knew it was going to be a shootout between those two quarterbacks, and like I kind of mentioned, I mean, neither team really even, I mean, they never really could get the run game going, but they never really even tried to establish it that much. I feel like they knew if we're going to win this game for Cincinnati, it's going to be because of Joe Burrow. And if we win this game for Kansas City, it's going to be because of Patrick Mahomes. And it was a great quarterback battle to watch. I mean, you look at the box score, and Burrow did have a couple interceptions. I think one of them at least was just more an arm pump than anything else. I think one of them was a little more crucial, but ultimately, the defense was able to step up and make plays for Cincinnati and for Kansas City. I mean, Chris Jones finally got a sack in the playoffs, I think, for the first time in his career.
That's
And he ended
insane to
up playing a
me.
pretty big role. Yeah, in the Chiefs' defensive success. Um, I will say the one thing about the Bengals that I'm convinced of after this season and last season, they are going to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, in my opinion. Like, I don't see any way it doesn't happen. I think they've obviously got a really young core with, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins all still on their rookie contracts. That defense still, once again, I mean, a defense that doesn't get a lot of notoriety for the second straight year came up pretty big in the playoffs all
Oh,
throughout
they
the
were
course of it.
huge.
Obviously, yeah, you go back to the wild card round, with Sam Hubbard's play
Mhm.
and just, all the great plays they had throughout the course of the year. And especially if the Bengals get Lou Anarumo back, if he doesn't take the Cardinals head coaching job, I think they're going to be poised to be just as good in the future. And then, I mean, regardless of what happens with like Joe Mixon or anybody else, this team has a core that is, I think, built to succeed. And you can say you want about Zach Taylor, but the reality is he's taken this team to at least the AFC title game each of the last 2 years. There's the Jeff Saturdays of the world and other coaches of that who have not nearly the accolades. So I think maybe it's time to put a little bit of respect on Zach Taylor's name for what he's been able to do these past couple of years with this team. But Joe Burrow just has that kind of killer instinct, and that was the one thing. Like going into the game, I said that it was going to be very tough for the Bengals to beat Mahomes for a fourth straight time, but I felt like if there was anyone that could do it, it's probably Joe Burrow and this Bengals team, because when you watch them play on offense, he's one of the few quarterbacks, and Mahomes to an extent is this way too, but Burrow is just one of those few quarterbacks you watch on offense, and sometimes you just feel like they can't lose. Like there's no way they can lose this game. And ultimately it came down to the very end, and once again it came down kind of to the Bengals defense at the end, and they weren't able to get the big stop they needed. But I think Cincinnati is still set up really, really well for the future.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, I wish I wish I could feel how you were feeling about feeling like we can't lose, but I mean, unfortunately, being a Bengals fan my entire life, there's never a situation where I'm gonna ever feel like that because I've been let down so many times.
Yeah. Well, Zach, I think is an Eagles fan, has probably felt that way for a large part of his life too. So I think he
Dude,
he gets the vibe as well. And me being a Broncos fan
always
doesn't help
expect the
either.
worst. Literally always expect the worst. That's why I was even
Yeah.
thinking last night. Well, I told you last night actually, Casey, how I kept saying just there's no way that this team wins their second Super Bowl within 5 years. Like the football gods will not allow that to happen. There's just no way. If that, but at the same, okay, I'll hold that thought until we actually get to the Super Bowl. But
Okay.
are we done talking about? Are we any last thoughts on Bengals Chiefs before we move on?
I think I'm good. Jack,
I,
have you said your piece?
Yeah, I'm not over it yet, but we can move on. Let's move on.
and
I feel you. All
before
right.
we
With
get
that
to the
being,
Super Bowl, I don't want to talk about the Pro Bowl because who wants to do that? But do we want to touch on the NFL Honors Awards real quick? I just thought of that since
yeah,
that just happened
Yeah, we could
last
do
we
night.
can
that.
do that. Yeah. I guess the big one, obviously, MVP, which we kind of expected was going to be Patrick Mahomes, although I will still be of the mentality that I think if Jalen Hurts doesn't get hurt at the end of the season, I think he ends up winning that award. I
I agree.
think, I mean, Mahomes, I feel like he's almost kind of like Aaron Donald at this point, in terms of, he's going to probably deserve to win MVP every single year with the numbers that he puts up. It's almost kind of just like pedestrian for him at this point. But, obviously the Eagles were a great story. Jalen Hurts with what he was able to do, not just obviously in the passing game, but, particularly in the running game as well. It was very similar almost to kind of the Cam Newton, type of MVP season with the dual threat ability that he was able to possess, and even Lamar Jackson to an extent. But um, for Mahomes, he ends up winning the MVP. Coach of the Year goes to Brian Dable, which makes a lot of sense considering the fact that they somehow got to the divisional round of the playoffs with Isaiah Hodgins as their wide receiver one and Daniel Jones as their quarterback. Um, I don't know if I don't know if you guys had any particular opinions or guys that you thought maybe got snubbed. I thought most of the awards kind of went as I thought they would. I predicted that the Jets were going to sweep the Rookie of the Year with Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. I mean, obviously Sauce had an insane year, making All Pro as a rookie, being I think the first cornerback to do that in like 41 years. Um, Geno Smith got the Comeback Player of the Year award, which I don't know if I completely agreed with, but good for him. And he also, bro, I saw today that he got a fifth place MVP vote. So he now has more
What?
MVP votes than Russell Wilson. That's, I'm not kidding you.
So does
That
the Bills
literally
trainer.
just, that,
Who voted for him?
yeah,
What professional is
I don't
like
know, man.
looking at all the possibilities for MVP? They're like, Geno Smith. Like who?
I don't,
What?
I don't want to talk about it, bro. Yeah. So Geno Smith now has more MVP votes than Russell Wilson. Go figure.
Well
D'Amico Ryan's
deserved.
got Assistant Coach of the Year. He's with the Texans now. Justin Jefferson, Offensive Player of the Year. Nick Bosa was Defensive Player of the Year. Hall of Fame class got announced as well. with Darrell Revis and DeMarcus Ware among the headliners, and Mr. Dak Prescott. Where's D-Mel at? He gets the Walter Payton Man of the Year award as well. But yeah, I mean, I think most of these awards, the only one I think I would have changed was I probably would have given Comeback of the Year to either Saquon or probably CMC. Gino, got a phone call.
It's D-Mel. He's calling.
But,
The mention. He's
dude,
stunned by the mentioning
but,
of Dak Prescott.
Yeah, but I don't know if you guys had any thoughts or opinions in terms of if you feel like anybody maybe got snubbed or won an award they shouldn't have, or if you felt like they were all pretty deserved. But Zach, what did you think about the awards?
You forgot to mention one Executive of the Year with the Howie Roseman. Just thought I'd put that out there.
Oh, yeah.
No, but honestly, all the awards went just as I expected. There weren't really any surprises. Geno Smith, it didn't surprise me. I also, let me start by saying I didn't actually like make any predictions. I had people in mind for most awards. Like I knew Mahomes was going to win MVP. I was following that closely. I figured Garrett Wilson would probably win. I thought Sauce Gardner would win because the man was what, all pro as a rookie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Coach of the Year, I knew Dable would probably win it, even though Sirianni finished like third or fourth. He was in the running for it, but yeah, it's just no, it all went as I expected.
Yeah.
Most
Jack.
unpredictable one would probably be Geno, but overall,
Yeah.
makes sense.
I agree. I mean, I think it was. There's not really any that I would change. I think Dable definitely deserves it considering what he did with that roster. So I'm glad they didn't just give it to the team with, the highest record and just give it to that coach and actually gave it to someone who, I mean, that turnaround was huge and they really didn't even add that many new pieces or anything. So, I mean, I think he had a really impressive year. And other than that, I mean, I think it's all pretty like you said, Casey. I think Hurts probably definitely would have won if he would have stayed healthy, just because of how much of an impressive year he was having and how much of a leap he took. But I think it's pretty much straightforward.
Yeah, I think I mean overall a lot of deserving people winning those awards and yeah, not too many big surprises, but ultimately now I guess the one good thing, Zach, if you're an Eagles fan here, is now Patrick Mahomes is going to have to deal with the curse, so to speak, of I think it's been 21 years since the league MVP won the Super Bowl, and I think like the last like since then, I think regular season MVPs are like 0-8 in the Super Bowl. So just saying, Hurts
Yeah,
not
but
winning
also
MVP maybe avoids that curse a little bit.
that's very true, but also it kind of cancels itself out because did you see what just happened with the Eagles fan who posed as a Chiefs fan and put a Chiefs jersey on the Rocky statue, but it was
Oh,
an inside job. And it
oh
actually ended up being an Eagles fan who's trying to like do
That's
that
bad
to
luck.
keep the curse going. So,
boy.
I mean, that just kind of now it's just sort of like the two. I mean, who knows what's gonna happen now? Now it's like even playing ground.
Yeah. That's gonna make things a little interesting for sure. But fellas, with that being said, I think it's time we move on to talking about the Super Bowl itself. There's a lot of storylines behind this game. Chiefs and Eagles in Glendale, Arizona on Sunday. It'll be on Fox, 6:30 kickoff. And fellas, both these teams recently Super Bowl champions. Obviously, a much different Eagles team won it back in 2018 with Nick Foles and Doug Peterson, and the Chiefs, of course, won it with most of their same core intact, minus, of course, Tyreek Hill back in 2020 with Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. But now these two teams square off. Andy Reid, obviously beloved in Philadelphia, even to this day, I'd say for the most part, he's still generally very well regarded. But now facing his former team in the Super Bowl, Nick Sirianni also facing his former team in the Super Bowl. He was on the Chiefs staff when Andy Reid took over and got fired, and now has come all the way back about a decade later to be the head coach of the Eagles. I guess if we want to just talk about that, the head coaching matchup here, I think is really interesting because for Andy Reid, obviously we know his prowess in terms of the passing game, obviously having Patrick Mahomes, but even, what he did with like Alex Smith and other guys like that in years prior versus the Eagles and Nick Sirianni with their ground game, which is really how they do it on offense. And they just kind of line up and play smash mouth football with Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders and Kenny G and Boston the Giant Killer. So I'm gonna be really interested to see how this coaching duel between two guys who obviously are on different ends of the experience spectrum, but also have two very different offensive philosophies, how they kind of line up with each other.
They do have two very different offensive philosophies, but if you just view them as coaches, those are two dudes who you can tell have complete command of their locker rooms respectfully. And I mean, like the players you can tell love playing for them week in and week out. And Andy Reid's obviously been doing it for much longer than Sirianni. But I mean, just the cultures alone that have been established in both those locker rooms, you can tell it just translates to the field. And I will say, Andy Reid coming off a bye week, that is something to keep an eye out on or keep like focus on because I mean, that's pretty scary stuff if you look at his track record with that and his history. I don't know the exact record of Andy Reid coming off a bye, but I know it's damn good. And
Yeah.
Sirianni has never made it this far in the playoffs before, considering last year was his first year. So one side has a lot more experience than the other.
Jack, what do you think about these two head coaches going against each other?
Well, like Zach said, I mean, Andy Reid, I mean, he's always gonna have a great plan. I mean, he knows he's been in the league forever. He's been here before. Um, and yeah, I mean, Sirianni, this is his first game, and the Eagles as a team, have a lot of, I mean, a lot of younger guys and guys that haven't um been to the Super Bowl before. And I mean, the Chiefs have been there. I mean, I guess you got some of the same vets from the Eagles team in 2018. But it'll be interesting to see how Jalen Hurts plays and what kind of game plan they put together, considering it's his first time in such a big game.
Yeah, I agree. I think I mean, obviously, Patrick Mahomes has been here, done that. So is Andy Reid. So is most of this Chiefs team. Obviously, yeah, you said, Jack, a lot of the Eagles veterans, you think about guys like, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. They were a part of that team in the Super Bowl that won it. Obviously, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, a lot of that offensive line. But a lot of these guys are playing in their first Super Bowl as well, with Hurts, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, a lot of the defense, Darius Slay. These are guys that haven't had that type of experience yet. So it definitely is going to be different for them. Speaking of Jason Kelsey, we would be very remiss, I feel like, if we didn't talk about the Kelsey Bowl aspect of this game with Jason Kelsey for the Eagles, one of the best centers in the NFL, if not the best center in the NFL, and Travis Kelsey, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, the best tight end in the league without a question, going up against each other. Zach, I know you said, and I kind of agree with you. I think this is probably going to be Jason Kelsey's last game, regardless of what happens. But it would be amazing, especially after the Super Bowl parade from a couple of years ago, if they would find a way to win the Super Bowl again and he could go out on top.
Real quick, I do have one more thing to add off of the previous point. Something I just thought about. Jalen Hurts, if you remember, as a freshman, did play in the national championship with Alabama. So he isn't, and also the national championship in college isn't the same as the Super Bowl, obviously, but I feel like he still has at least some experience on the big stage. So that's something to keep an eye out for. But regarding the Kelsey Bowl, I think win or loss, Jason Kelsey's 100% retiring after this game. Because win or loss, if you just view it from his standpoint, he's already won. I mean, playing against his brother in the Super Bowl, that's literally the perfect way to end your career. So if they're playing against a different team in the AFC, then maybe it would be less certain. But I mean, there's no way this isn't the perfect ending for him and his career. Considering he already has a ring from a few years ago too. It would be probably like extremely disappointing to say less if this was his first Super Bowl appearance and he lost to his brother, because then Travis Kelsey would never let him hear the end of it. But considering he already has a Super Bowl win or loss, obviously you want to win this. It's the Super Bowl. But yeah, this is his last game.
I guess there probably are some bragging rights here because they both have Super Bowl rings, obviously. So whichever one wins the game is going to have 2 rings, and the other one's only going to have 1. So I'm sure as brothers, that will definitely be something that maybe gets rubbed in just a little bit. Jack, do you have anything you want to add on the whole Kelsey Bowl? This is kind of like the Harbaugh Bowl from like 10 years ago, kind of. Anything you want to add on that effect?
Not necessarily. I just think I feel like there's so many big stories in this game, and it's like a marketer's dream. So that I'm sure the NFL is going to be, I mean, they're capitalizing on all these things. Like you got the Kelsey Bowl, Andy Reid coming back to play Philly in the Super Bowl, first 2 black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, which is really cool. So there's a lot of cool stories in this game, and as a big brother, I'll definitely be rooting for Jason Kelsey to get that second ring and have those bragging rights.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that. Oh shoot. I was gonna say something and I completely lost my train of thought. So with that being said, I think that's a sign that we need to start talking about this game itself and how we think it's going to play out in terms of what's going to happen on the field. So I'm going to go first just because Zach already knows who I'm picking, and so I'll leave the suspense for you two. But as far as how this game goes, Chiefs and Eagles, obviously, like we've said, 2 teams that do it very different ways. The Chiefs in the passing game, they can run the ball, but they rely a lot on the passing game. Whereas the Eagles, yeah, they can throw the ball. I mean, Jalen Hurts had a huge game this year against the Titans and against the Steelers, against a couple of their teams throwing the ball. But their bread and butter is running the ball, getting behind that big offensive line, and just playing bully ball. Basically, I mean, it's literally the epitomization of Philadelphia, basically on a football field, is what they try to do. So with that being said, you look at the defenses, of course. We know that Eagles pass rush. That is going to be, I think, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, that is probably going to be the unit that I think decides it. Because especially when you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, who is not 100%. We got to remember, neither is Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen, coming off that shoulder injury, he's still not, completely up to the level that he was. So both these quarterbacks are coming into this game a little banged up, but Hurts at least still has his mobility. Mahomes can run. Jack knows that from a couple weeks ago. He has to, but he doesn't have much mobility, in certain situations. So, if the Eagles can get a lot of pressure, and this is kind of like what we saw a couple of years ago when they played the Bucks, they got a lot of pressure on Mahomes, flushed him out of the pocket, and he couldn't do anything. That was behind a bad offensive line. The offensive line's better now, but if Mahomes doesn't have that mobility to escape that pressure, it could end up being a similar result. That's what I think potentially could happen. Obviously, the Chiefs, they've got a lot of great defensive players as well, but they've also got a lot of injuries they're dealing with, and particularly on the offensive end, with Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster, both of them look like they're going to play. They logged full practices yesterday, so I think they should be good. Obviously, there won't be any Mecole Hardman. He's on IR. L'Jarius Sneed is kind of a question mark at this point. He's their best cornerback. He may or may not play with a knee injury. It looks like he's going to be all right, probably. But either way, that being said, how I see this game playing out, I think it's going to be back and forth. It's going to be a close game. I don't really foresee a situation where this is a blowout. But I am going to take the Philadelphia Eagles to win Super Bowl 57 because I think that their ground game matches up well with Kansas City. I know that Cincinnati and some other teams weren't really able to establish the run against them, but I think the Eagles can hit you so many different ways with it that they will find a way to move the ball down the field on that Chiefs defense. And if they can control the time possession, I think that's going to be huge in not only, obviously just sustaining offensive drives, but keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field. Then obviously you go to the defense. And like I said, I think that's going to be the defining kind of unit for this game with Hassan Reddick, who's had an outstanding year, and that entire defensive line. Then obviously you've still got a great secondary with Darius Slay and CJ Gardner-Johnson and all those guys. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that defense can step up and make plays. And going up against the Chiefs team, we've talked all year about how they haven't had Tyreek Hill, and that really hasn't mattered most of the year. I think it could matter a little bit in this game because they don't have that guy other than Travis Kelce. And Kelce, I know, is probably going to do his thing. Like, he'll probably, no matter what, have like 8 catches, 90 yards, maybe a touchdown. But they just don't have that guy that can really, really stretch the defense, and playing against one of the best defenses in the NFL, I think that could come back to harm them. So with that being said, I think Philadelphia will win the Super Bowl. I will give a score prediction. I'm going to say 28-23, I think is what I'll say. And I think that Philly will win the Super Bowl. I think that the Eagles are going to have a big game on the ground. I think Jalen Hurts will make enough plays through the air. I think he'll end up winning Super Bowl MVP. He'll have probably maybe a couple passing touchdowns, probably a rushing touchdown in there as well. And Philadelphia will probably burn to the ground, but they will win the Super Bowl for the second time in about 5 years. That is my prediction. So with that being said, Jack, I'm going to have you go first. I want to, since Zach's the Eagles fan here, I kind of want to save his reaction or his pick for last. But what do you think is going to happen, Jack?
So I mean, I confidently, like, I'm confident saying I don't see a scenario. I mean, obviously it could happen, but I really think it would be really hard for Philly to lose this game. I mean, do they have any injuries in their starting 22 players?
They have every single starter from week 1 healthy and playing.
Like, you don't see that like in the Super Bowl. Like, that doesn't ever happen. And I mean, their O line and D line is so dominant, and Kansas City is so banged up. I just have a really hard time seeing Kansas City pulling it out. I mean, obviously it's Patrick Mahomes and it's Andy Reid, and I mean they're gonna make stuff happen. But I think Philly would have to really screw things up for them to not pull it out. That's just my opinion, but obviously we'll see. And I guess for a score prediction, I'm gonna say 31-20. Philly's gonna win.
Okay.
I would like that a lot.
I could totally see it just being a pretty dominant performance from Philly. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just think they have all the pieces this year. Everything's gone well for them. If they can just run the ball and stop the Chiefs from running the ball, I mean, like you said, Casey, they don't have a lot of weapons on offense. Um, I mean, Mahomes is banged up, Kelsey was banged up, um, and that D line is just dominant. So I really think Philly's got it in the bag, but we'll see.
All right. So we have 2 picks for Philly, and now Zach, for the final time this year, this season started out on the Gridiron Lion Show with you just every week picking against the Eagles until you finally decided they were good, and now here they are in the final game of the season in the Super Bowl. The $1 million question, Zachary Steven Rhoda. Are you going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles to win Super Bowl 57? Go.
Damn, man, the pressure is on. I was just thinking about that, how it's kind of fitting. In week one, we played against the Lions. They said we're gonna lose, and we won. And then that happened probably like 4 or 5 weeks in a row. I kept picking us to lose, and we kept winning. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna end this show how we started it. No, no, like okay, honestly, like you guys brought up a lot, and like if you want, okay, okay,
Zach,
do
come on,
you
just say
want
it.
me?
Zach, come on. It's your team. You know they got this. They're gonna win the
But
Super
that's
Bowl.
the
Come on.
thing.
Don't go, don't bet against your team. Come on.
I just saw today how the Chiefs apparently now they have like the injuries, but there's some sickness going around through their locker room, like with
I
Chris
saw that.
Jones apparently has cold flu symptoms. Mahomes has one of other players.
The team.
They already are with injuries. Like the Chiefs have all this stuff stacked against them. And if you look at our roster, I firmly believe are the much better team. If you ask me right now who the better team is, I think the Eagles are. I just see some bullshit happening. I literally think I'm just setting myself up for disappointment. I guarantee it's going to be a close game. There's no way that we lose and it's not a one score, but I see us losing like a 24-20 type game. And it's just it's going to be very disappointing. And I see myself just like drinking in sorrow and just having quite the terrible night.
What,
But
what is there anything? Is there anything like specifically you think is going to happen that's going to go wrong, or like where does the train fall off the tracks here for the Eagles in your mind?
It's not the Eagles winning isn't in script for this year. So
I just I see the Chiefs offense getting hot late in the game and then them just closing out. I think the Eagles are going to start off pretty hot early on because they usually do that. And then I see Andy Reid and the Chiefs making adjustments and then getting back in it. And then I see them just closing out in the fourth quarter. Mahomes is going to put together some heroic drive and just crush the hopes and dreams of all Eagles fans. And I just can't see life being good enough as to where the Eagles can win 2 Super Bowls in 5 years after going their entire existence without one. Like if that happens, dude, I'm gonna Demo is like literally gonna leave our group chat, bro, because I haven't talked like crap all season. But if we win, dude, I'm unloading so
unloading
much
what?
and some heat. I'm dropping some heat on that man. We will do a we if we win the Super Bowl. Okay, I'll say this right now: win or loss, we need D-Mel on the final show because if we win, I'm just gonna like rip into him, and if we lose, I'll take it. I'll take it like a champ. I'll let him say whatever he wants. But
That's gonna be
as long as
CTV.
before the game, we have to text him and have him just agree no matter the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
would be
guys should
totally
come
down.
to you guys should come here. If Philly wins, we can go to the parade.
That's what I want to do.
That's true.
If Philly wins,
Honestly,
I'm gonna try and go up to the parade, and I could literally just we could literally just stay in Westchester the
Yeah,
weekend.
it's
That'd be
like
perfect.
yeah.
35 minutes from here. So
Okay.
I figure I'll probably go if they win. I mean, even though I'm not really an Eagles fan, it'll be fun.
You're an Eagles fan by association,
Yeah.
somewhat.
I'll always root
You're
for the
rooting
Eagles.
against the Chiefs because they, like, yeah. I saw this one comment earlier, and it was like, "Who do you think's gonna win the Super Bowl?" And I was like, as a Bengals fan, like Chiefs can burn in hell or some shit like that. I'm like, damn, don't know how you really feel.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No,
that
I
is my
agree. I
score
think I
prediction, though. I think 24-20.
so you think it's gonna come down to like the last drive, like Mahomes is just gonna pull some, you know,
I think it will be
pull a rabbit
20
out of
to.
the hat.
I see them throwing a touchdown in the go-ahead touchdown in the final 4 or 5 minutes, and Philly getting one last chance on offense, and then the Chiefs just getting a good stop and their defense stepping up.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I mean, that's possible. I could see. I mean, you look at the teams on paper and you feel like things are kind of stacked against Mahomes, but if anyone can do it, it's probably Mahomes. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But fellas, do you have any final thoughts on this game before we move on and just decide to watch and see what happens this weekend?
Who's which commentators are doing this game?
It is going to be 5, and so it's going to be Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson on the call.
Okay, I can live with that.
Yo, it's your dad, Jack.
Dad.
That's true. I
Literally,
hadn't thought of
at the
that.
Super Bowl party, just be like, everybody, guys, fun fact, that's my dad.
It kind of looks like he could
Literally,
be.
just like he starts
little bit.
like, swearing live on air, just dropping the most foul language possible.
You guys got any
It's a
predictions for who's gonna have the wildest commercial?
Go, daddy.
I feel like Doritos or like Mountain Dew is always a safe bet.
Yeah, those are always good. The Burger King commercials lately, I feel like the Whopper, they got to do something with that, right? Like
it's become so
and
popular.
whatever.
I feel like they would. I would capitalize on that for sure.
And the NFL always they always have their Super Bowl commercial every year, and it's always just this like stupidly outrageous thing. And they've like teased it the past couple weeks. Like they've shown like clips of like different players and like some of the stuff they're doing, I guess, whatever they're acting. It looks very interesting as well. So I'm gonna be interested to see what that looks like. Are we taking any prop bets on how over under for the national anthem and all that stuff?
Who is it?
Is
it Chris Stapleton? I think. Someone told me that. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
I'd probably go with the under on that.
I would go with the under if it's a country singer. If it was someone who is like extreme vocalist who hit all these high notes, they always drag it out.
Yeah.
Just like,
it is Chris Stapleton.
Like, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think the under is safe with that one. But I usually don't bet on any of the games, so I probably won't. But if I were going to bet,
don't.
How about first?
I already have it. I already have.
What?
Oh.
How about first touchdown of the game?
I'm gonna say Kelly. That would be my prediction.
I'm gonna go Miles Sanders.
Next up, Miles Sanders. Let's go. Penn State proud.
I just think whoever gets the ball first, I see that team scoring a touchdown the first drive.
Isn't that another trend too, where it's like it was like the past decade, every single team, it was something with the coin toss. It was like the team to win the coin toss ended up winning the game.
Yeah.
Or something like that, or like the team to start with the ball, or
yeah, I think I remember hearing something about that last year's Super Bowl.
Then there's always that curse too of like the team that wears white in the Super Bowl is more likely to win the team that wears like a colored jersey. So the Eagles are wearing green and the Chiefs are wearing white, and everyone's like, "Oh, that means the Chiefs must win." Like I don't know about that, but
are they actually?
Either way. Yeah, they are. They are. Well, the Eagles, hey, they wore green when they won the Super Bowl 5 years ago, so they can do it again. We'll see.
This roster definitely is way more talented than the roster we had that year.
Yeah, how did Nelson Aguilar like actually play an integral part in you guys? And like Corey Clement scored a touchdown in that game too.
We
I'm just
just were
thinking about
so
that now.
deep. That's a year we got destroyed by injuries and still just that
Yeah.
team was just so deep. We had, if you look at our receivers, Alshon, that was like prime Alshon. He was a beast. And then we had dudes like Aguilar stepping up. Torrey Smith, he was good. He was catching a bunch of deep catches. Um, yeah, Ertz was Ertz.
Yeah.
Jay Jai, we had him that year. Like everybody was balling
Yeah.
out for us.
Jai and Blunt. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, I forgot about him too. Yeah, literally, our offense, we didn't really have one dude that was dominant. It was just kind of Nick Foles spreading the ball around and getting everyone involved. And at the core center of the entire offense, the offense runs through the offensive line. And that's the thing. Our worst games are when someone's down and injured. If you look at our record with and without Lane Johnson, it's very similar to the Steelers with and without TJ Watt, where it's like that one player makes such an impact where you take him out and it's like a below 500 record. It's ridiculous. But Lane Johnson, there's a debate that he's the best offensive tackle in the NFL right now with how he's been playing.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely the best right tackle, I'd say.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's for sure in the conversation. And yeah, I mean, Kelsey best center, I
Kelsey,
think, without a doubt. Lot is one of the best in terms of left tackle. And like,
I saw a
Lane,
play where Mailata just completely drove Nick Bosa to the ground after Nick Bosa
yeah,
was calling him out, saying he's just really big.
yeah. It's
And
like
then
the
Dickerson's a Pro Bowler, maybe
yeah.
because I'm like he's amazing. He's a great young guard, but you also got to wonder how much of that has to do with his name and voters just be like, "Yo, I'm gonna vote for Landon Dickerson." Like people who just
I
like
love that.
NFL fans who don't know offensive linemen, so they just vote for their
I,
favorite
I
name.
I love that man when he was at Alabama. He was just such a savage. I was big time fan of that man. I was hyped when you
he
guys
played
got
Same,
center there, right?
yeah, he was Jalen Hurts
Yeah, he did.
center.
That's
He
right.
did.
Oh yeah. Okay.
His name's Landon Dickerson. And he's number 69. It's like there you go. And then Sayamalu, he's
And
kind of like the odd man
he
out
got
when
wheels.
talking
Yeah.
about our offensive line, but he's been a starter for years, and he was a starter on our offensive line that won the Super Bowl. Like he's very underrated.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good.
I agree.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Casey, how do you
offensive
feel?
line,
I
I
never
think, is
got
going
to
to be a
ask you
big.
about Sean Payton. How you feel about that?
Ooh, I mean, at this point, like we're kind of in a spot where Sean Payton's probably the only guy that could save Russell Wilson, I feel like. So, I mean, the fact that we gave up a first round pick for him that, to be honest, I didn't even know we still had, is not great. But at this point, like
Mhm.
we've gone all in on Russell Wilson. Like
Yeah, you got to do
we're at the
something.
point now where like we're we're married to him at this point. We got to just make it work somehow, no matter how many assets or stuff we have to give
Yeah,
up. So
yeah,
I don't know.
definitely.
I will say I much prefer Sean Payton over like Jim Harbaugh or someone like that.
Yeah,
I'll take I'll take that at least any day. But hopefully after taking a year off, he still knows how to coach because anything would be better than Nate Hackett after this year. I'll say that much at least.
yeah,
That was
you're probably right.
terrible. But
All right,
yeah,
well,
fellas, it is going to be a what's that?
nothing. I was just getting ready to close it, and then you hopped
Oh,
on. I was just gonna say we're just
okay.
out of time.
Do, do you want to close it? You want to do the
No,
honors as the Eagles fan?
I want
Okay,
to.
fair enough.
You do the closing, and then I'll say like the last thing.
All right, all right. So with that being said, fellas, it is going to be a great Super Bowl Sunday. We will all be watching State Farm Stadium in Arizona. Whoever wins the game on Sunday will have more wins in State Farm Stadium than the Arizona Cardinals had this year. Fun fact. So with
Oh my
that being
God.
said, whether it's the Eagles, I know that's terrible. Whether it's the Eagles or whether it's the Chiefs, we will be watching, and we'll be back next week to break everything down in terms of the Super Bowl. Zach will either be really happy or really sad, and The rest of us will probably all be somewhere in between that. But with that being said, for our producer, Jay Skibbins, our friend Jack Burkhart joining us today on the Gridiron Lion, and my colleague, Zach Rhoda, I am Casey Kreider. Zach, bring us home.
Go Birds. Let's go. Do not disappoint. That's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to do a closing. I just want to say go Birds.
Go Birds.
All right. Go Birds.